Coming to you live from Miami, Florida, this is the Fredcast, and I'm your host, Fred Bush. Welcome everybody to episode 7 of the Fredcast. I am Fred Bush, your host, and today I'm here in Miami, Florida, my hometown, and I'm very happy to be here with you as always. I hope you have been appreciating and enjoying the previous episodes, and I hope that we continue to create some content that's worthy of your attention. And as usual, as you know, if you have any questions or any way that I can target to you more specifically, anything that is helpful in your life, just let me know and we'll get to it. So today, on the agenda of the show is possibly the first time that I am going to discuss my personal opinion and my personal kind of understanding of the COVID and the pandemic and the vaccine. I've been very quiet about this subject, and I am vaccinated now. So, as someone who has received both of my vaccine doses, I feel like that puts me in a position to really say whatever I want about it, whether I like it or not. Since I've gone through it, and which means, whether I believe it or not, I still went and did it. So there's that. We're also going to talk about today's myth, health and nutrition myth, about the idea that children need to drink milk. You've probably heard that before, for good bones. So I'd like to address that, the myth of children needing to drink milk to get calcium. And then today we'll discuss our living enlightenment section will be about speaking truth and when to speak truth and when actually not to speak truth, because there may be times when it may not be appropriate, and we'll see how that goes. All right, so let's get started today. As you may or may not have already figured out, I tend to hold a series of opinions, sometimes that are not the same as everybody else. I would imagine that's one of the reasons why you might choose to listen to different viewpoints and different presentations, is to get ideas that you may not have heard of before or don't agree with, maybe, potentially. So again, I will preface this entire conversation about COVID and the pandemic and the vaccine with the fact that I've received my second dose of the Moderna vaccine. The first shot didn't really affect me at all, just soreness in my arm for a couple days. The second shot, same soreness in the arm, plus about 2 days of kind of feeling not really myself, a little low energy. But now I'm on the third day and I feel pretty much back to completely myself, and I feel great. So as I say that, and I say that I got the vaccine, I can now say to you that I'm really not sure whether that was or a good idea or not. And I didn't do it because I am certain of anything, actually. In fact, that's kind of where I'm leading here, is that I don't really understand a lot of this stuff. But I was still willing, for the sake of the community, potentially, to go ahead and get the shot. Now, when it comes to COVID or Corona or any kind of virus, I've been studying and kind of learning about the nature of viruses for quite a long time. Not just recently, kind of like everybody else has kind of started to become experts, over the last couple of years with this pandemic, and everyone is, has their opinion. But in fact, I've been studying this subject for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, all the way back to when it was being discussed with the AIDS epidemic. And one thing that just continues to, I guess, be difficult for me to reconcile is the fact that I learned early on that one of the kind of natures of a virus, one of the characteristics of a virus that is specific, and I have not heard anybody contradict this still to this day, is that viruses specifically do not have metabolism. They don't have metabolism. In other words, a virus, because it doesn't have a metabolism, is not a living creature. Now, I don't know if you have a different view of this, or I could say a different kind of imagination of what a virus is based upon the framing of that word in the mainstream media and the mainstream science, that a virus is something that is some sort of an entity that's alive and it's out to get you, and it is something that you can kill. Like you can go and kill a virus or something like that. And you really is something that's just impossible to do, because if something does not have a metabolism, that means you can't kill it because it's not alive in the first place. Now, what actually a virus is, I am not really necessarily saying that I could tell you that. What I'm trying to first do is tell you what it's not. And what it's not is a living entity that's alive, that anything can kill, because it has no metabolism, and that's by its very nature. Now, from my studies on this subject over the 20 years of having access to very deep levels of information that are far away from the mainstream, and having been reading things and exposing myself to different ways of seeing things over the many years, and I have yet to again hear anybody contradict this, is that viruses are essentially little isolates of genetic coding that create reactions in the body. In other words, they're pieces of gene codes, of genetic coding, that have a triggering effect on the body and create reactions in the body. Now, what those protein isolates are coming from, there's different theories on that. In my early studies on talking about the AIDS virus, and this is something I have never spoken about. I don't even speak about this in public, much less would I have thought I would speak about this in a recording. But there is a book that's called AIDS, which of course means is AIDS, and then it says that AIDS stands for two things. One, it stands for America is dying slowly, but AIDS also really stands for animals in digestive system, and it presents a very strong case. And you can look for this book. It's actually unbelievably difficult to find, and I think if you go onto Amazon and you look for this book, AIDS, Animals in Digestive System by Michael Joseph, and you look for that book, I think it's completely out of print, and it would be like $700 probably to find that book, if it even existed. But what it explains is that this relationship between animal eating and slaughtering and all of the blood that gets put into the groundwater and is creating these genetic isolates that are essentially the viruses that are causing the different things that are coming up. In his case, he was linking eating animal foods to AIDS itself. Um, Now, I'm not interested in debating that, but what I am interested in is explaining that what a virus is not what you might have thought. It's not just some little bug that you could just kill. It's not like that because it's not alive in the first place. So what is it? Well, I mean, I guess they have their ways of identifying them and differentiating them based upon aspects of the genetic code that they discover, and somehow this genetic code is able to hijack, because of the nature of it, living cells and kind of replicate itself. Kind of like the genetics is overlaying a living cell's genetics. I mean, I'm not suggesting that I'm a firm understanding of this. I'm just simply suggesting that nobody does. I don't even know if you all remember, but again, going back to the AIDS time, there was never a time when an AIDS test would have given an AIDS virus. It would only have shown the antibodies, and the virus is never actually found. What's found are the antibodies to it. And again, this is whatever this is. But what it isn't is a living creature out to get you that you could kill. You know, there's so much mystery to this. I mean, there's so much inexplicableness to this. I remember that, I don't know how anyone can explain these things, but when the pandemic, when when this whole thing first started, in the United States hadn't really gotten too many cases. Bam! All of a sudden, there was like, I don't know, a few cases in the middle of like Utah or in the middle of Nevada. I don't remember the state, but it was a state that was deep inside the United States. It was not on a coast or anything like that. And these were people who had never traveled. Okay, so these were just like people who had never traveled and had no exposure to anyone who had traveled. I mean, we were talking about small towns in the middle of rural areas. We're talking about, between 500 and 1,000 miles away from any ocean. And all of a sudden, these people have COVID. I mean, how did that happen? Is anybody interested in how that could happen, if it's spread by people? And so, they say that the thing cannot live on surfaces, so don't worry about surfaces. Um, well, none of what anyone is really suggesting makes any sense to me, personally. Um, I see this really as much as anything as a relationship to a dysfunctional immune system, and what happens when a dysfunctional immune system gets exposed to this genetic code or this virus particle, um, and then how does it handle the detox process from that? I think that we're more looking at that than anything else. You know, have there been studies that say that plant-based eaters are getting affected less by COVID? Yes, there are. There have been. I had not seen one until recently, but my friend sent me one just recently, a study that was saying just that. Plant-based eaters that probably have stronger immune systems are doing better, you know. So, I'm a plant-based eater. I'm a fruit-based. I live off of fruit. I don't eat 100% fruit, but that's definitely what drives me. Um, and so I feel like my immune system would be pretty strong, and I think that it is pretty strong. And I never really felt threatened by this COVID thing, and that's probably hubris and overconfidence and maybe short-sightedness. But it was just, I always felt like my immune system was stronger. Well, meanwhile, I have a friend Um, and I would have put her in the same kind of category as myself, someone who was doing yoga every day. She's young. She's, I think, been a vegan almost her entire life, for crying out loud. I mean, she grew up in that kind of a household, really disciplined in every way, and all of that, and that she got COVID a couple months ago and took a good hit from it. Really got pretty whacked. Um, and she herself was not a believer in COVID as a thing. She's like, oh well, that's not for people like us. That's not for people who are living healthy and who are young and who are not, doing whatever. And yet there it was. And when I saw her recently, she said, "Oh man, I changed my attitude completely about this thing." She said, "I used to think it wasn't even real, and now I can't believe that anything could be this real." Because she had all the symptoms and really took it hard. She's recovering now, but even she says it's hard to get back to her full self. And so that was my attitude. And then there's someone with the same attitude as me, and then she got it. And so, I can't really keep or maintain the attitude anymore that young, healthy, vibrant people are immune to this thing, because it sure seems like we're not. That everyone needs to take care, which is why I always wore masks and I always took care, even when I felt like this was not something that I was vulnerable to, even though I wasn't really correct in that assumption. And now I have gotten my vaccine, and I don't like vaccines, and I'm actually anti-vaccine. As a teacher, but I'm not necessarily anti this vaccine. I'm anti all the other vaccines. Relatively speaking, I don't necessarily think that it's really a great idea to be vaccinating these babies. And I do believe that there is a relationship between autism and vaccinations in young children, when their brains are developing to introduce those heavy metals, and I just don't think there's anything good about it, personally. Um, and I understand the arguments that people make. Oh, well, it got rid of polio, and some people say that it did, and really some people say that it didn't. And some people say that polio just got renamed into something else, and so they got rid of it just because they renamed it into spinal meningitis or some other different names. Um, but I'm not here to argue that. I'm just here to say that I got the vaccine. I am an anti-vaccine attitude type of teacher. I don't really. I more believe that the immune system is what's important in general, and maintaining the immune system at the highest level. But this is obviously an unusual situation, and um, you know, I certainly don't have enough absolute confidence and certainty, and I mean that with the highest level. I mean, I don't have 100% certainty that I am completely correct. So the fact that I might not be correct, the fact that I could be an asymptomatic, and by in their definition of things, an asymptomatic carrier, and I don't get the vaccine because I have my own personal issues with it, and all of a sudden I could hurt somebody else. That's unacceptable to me. And so, especially my family. And so, yeah, I got it, and I don't recommend that people don't get it. I'm not going to be here and tell you that you have to get it. But apparently, it makes a difference. I don't think these numbers can be faked. I don't think this data could be rigged, that easily. The data that says that the thing works, the data that says that the hospitalizations are less, the data that says that, you know, that less people are dying. That data, it can't really be faked that easily, and so it's probably true, which means that the vaccine obviously probably works. And so even if you're coming from my world of raw food, or the world of yoga, or the world of natural healing, and even my teacher is very much against these vaccines, and he's very much against anything about this stuff. But I still listen to what he says, but I still got the vaccine because I think for myself. I don't think only what my teacher thinks, you know? I have more than one teacher anyway. But the fact is that even to these last days, the latest videos I've seen of him on YouTube, he's still confidently saying that the vaccine is worthless. Nobody should take it, and that this whole thing is just a series of detoxification events that people can't handle, and that people are going to the hospital where they're dying in the hospital because of the way hospitals treat them. And I don't really disagree with that, believe it or not. I know you might just laugh at that. And I think that there's a possibility that that's true. I really do. I do think it's possible, but I don't think it's completely, absolutely definitive, which is why I'm a bit more nuanced about it in my own application, as you could see. All right, so that's all I'm going to really say about this. It's still confusing to me. Maybe in some years people will figure it out, maybe not. Because really the medical paradigm doesn't understand much in general. I mean, that might sound a little bit rough, but it's true. I mean, this is a paradigm, and a paradigm, of course, is a way of thinking. Well, this is a paradigm that is accustomed to taking symptomology in the external world, and instead of identifying the cause of the symptomology, is more accustomed to simply suppression, finding ways of suppressing the symptoms through other means like pharmaceuticals or other chemical means. And so, by the very nature of the modern medical world, which is investigating this and creating all of this data and making all these studies, they're so far away from understanding what is health in the first place, and they're so busy naming symptoms into diseases and differentiating different symptoms into different diseases and creating names for everything so that then they can create pharmaceuticals for things, so that they can, obviously make a good bit of money from that process, and all the while people are not getting healthier in this system. In fact, the immune systems of everybody is moving in the wrong direction, and that really could be mostly what's responsible for this. So, whatever the radical or the non radical theories are here, I don't really believe any of it. But I certainly don't believe the modern medical analysis either. I just simply got the vaccine because I am feeling responsible, if it's true, to everyone around me, and I figure if people I just figure it can't hurt, even though it probably can hurt. I figure, hey, it can't hurt, and I don't think too much about it. I don't study too much about all the bad stuff that's in vaccines. I don't even look at that at all. I'm actually, since I've taken the vaccine and I already have it, I'm not really interested in that. What I'm interested in is detoxing myself nicely, getting those metals out if they're there, and moving on, just moving on, and not making a big deal out of it. Because I've taken other vaccines. I grew up on vaccines. So what's this one? Just another one. No big deal. Um, so that's my position on that, and I'm not sure it was interesting to you, but I kind of wanted to get it out there at least once for the record. So thanks for your patience on hearing that little explanation and perspective. So now we'll move into our nutritional myth of the episode. All right, so as you have seen on our episodes, we are looking into the nutritional myths that are going around and basically keeping everybody down and hurting everybody, really, and keeping people sick. There's so many nutritional myths that make money for people at the expense of other people's health. I don't think that's really ethically, or even, I mean, I don't like to use the word, but that's almost immoral to me. Misusing information and suggesting people things that are false so that, so that then they go and do things that help you but hurt themselves. Wow. And that's a very common situation with the marketing of food products, to the public. With these very, very powerful marketers who are able to really affect our subconscious mind. I mean, I'll give you, this is not what I was going to speak about, but just for fun, this comes to my mind an example of yesterday as I was listening to the radio, and it was a commercial for um, a burger, and it was a fast food restaurant, one of these high dollar, high marketing fast food type of places, and what this commercial was saying was that it's all about balance. It's all about balance, is what they were saying. And so they got us thinking about how it's all about balance in their commercial. And then they go on to say that it's all about balance. And so what that means is that because they have three, this is a triple burger, everybody. They're advertising a triple burger. So because they have three patties, three burger patties, and it's all about balance, right? That means that they have to have three pieces of cheese, right? And that was how they were presented. So great balance between the burgers and the cheese. And I mean, and this is marketing to, and all we're thinking about is the word balance. And then, yeah, well, of course, three burgers. And okay. And so what you have is people that are manipulating your kind of your absorption and manipulating your mind with powerful suggestions, and then using that to kind of just throw information at you that has no factual basis. I mean, we're talking about the human diet. Burgers nor cheese are anything related to the human diet. So to use the word balance for the human diet, well, it's just such a strange word. Balance between what? In this case, that was a balance between two different things that you don't want. I mean, that's putting two things on the scale, balancing them out. Neither one do you want. So balance, as talking about the human diet, doesn't even relate. But people do always feel like you want to have a balanced diet, a balanced diet. So these people are using the word balanced in their advertising. Okay, it's just an example of how things are and how the industries of information and suggestion, the advertising industries, operate on us, and we have to be very careful of that. But the myth I want to talk about is how children need to drink milk, and because children need to drink milk because it has calcium. That's the one I want to talk about. I always prefer to talk about things that affect children because, I mean, I grew up, with every advantage in the world from a family perspective. But from a nutritional perspective, I was disadvantaged, and not in the sense that I didn't have access to better nutritional food. It was just really because I was such a stubborn little brat growing up, that I just refused to eat certain things, like fruits and vegetables and things that had nutrition. And I only would eat processed food. And I did that really until I was in my early 20s when I finally got out of the country and started to explore a little bit. But I was really stubborn. And as a result, that was not, that did not really work out well for me growing up. But I was healthy, and I don't know how. This is how I just know that my genetics must be pretty good to have been able to stay healthy throughout those early years. But anything that affects children, to me, I think is should be our highest priority as a community, as a as a as a people, as a species. I think that that focusing on children's health should be a major priority for all of us. I think that people maybe believe that it should be, but then they don't do anything about it. Well, the first thing is to tackle these lies. I mean, you can call them myths if you want to be nice, so let's just call them lies, and forget about the nicety. The lie that children need to drink milk from a cow, and it just couldn't be any more false. We're mammals, and mammals have characteristics. Warm-blooded hair, live birth. One of the characters of a mammal is that we do drink milk. We do. In case you didn't know, I was not a milk drinking baby. I was a formula baby. But most babies, especially in Latin America, where I spent a lot of time, are breastfed. And even nowadays in Europe and in North America, they've basically, you know, reconvinced women that the way to do it is to breastfeed, because it's so much better. And really, so what are we saying? That humans do need to drink milk for their infancy. Okay, it means the first 2 years. In some cases, it could be 3 years. In some cases, and in some cultures, it could even be longer than 3 years. And that is absolutely normal and natural. It could go as far as 5 years, okay, and that's still normal and natural, because whatever the upper end of that spectrum is what that upper end of that spectrum is, and that creates the edge of what is natural. But what then will happen in every single one of those cases, all of them, okay, and whether the person stops, is weaned at age 2 or age 1 or age 2 or age 3, age 4, whatever it is, at some point they will get weaned, which means they will stop drinking the milk at some point. When that happens, they will never return. That is how nature works. If you go into the animal kingdom, you will see that in every animal. In fact, the definition of a mammal is an animal that gets weaned off of milk and does not return back to it. That's the definition of a mammal. You're mammals. We're all mammals. Your children are mammals, which means that they need the milk of their mother for a period of time, whatever that time is. It also means that when the period of time of taking milk from their mother is over, that the time of them drinking milk for the rest of their life is over. So the time that a child stops drinking milk, a human child stops drinking milk for the rest of his life, is either age 3, age 4, age 5, or whatever that is. And once they stop drinking their mother's milk, they never, ever, ever return back to milk again, because that's the definition of a mammal, everybody, and we're mammals. All right, and there's no exception to that rule except in us as human beings, and we make the exception for ourselves, and we are the only ones as well that suffer the kind of degenerative diseases that we suffer from, and it's because we eat so far away from our natural dietary, and we do things that are such violations of our nature. Well, one of those things is continuing to drink dairy foods as children, and young adults, and then as adults. Now, milk and dairy has calcium. It does, but you don't get to use it because of the way that digestion works, and because of the way the chemistry of dairy actually works when it relates to your human digestion. Because dairy, while it's alkaline in the outside world, it's actually acidic after you've digested it. So when your child drinks milk, which has dairy in it, what really happens is that the blood becomes so acidic because of the milk that and the dairy in the milk is not accessible anyway, because it was boiled and it was pasteurized. But but then your blood becomes, or your child's blood becomes so acidic that the body has to neutralize that chemistry. Otherwise, your child will die from going over acidic. I think you've heard of the acid alkaline blood pH conversation. And so with dairy, that's what happens. And obviously, the human body is pretty intelligent, and it doesn't like to die. And so what the human body does, or your child's body or our body does, is it releases calcium ions, which are alkaline, as well as magnesium ions, which are alkaline, from the connective tissue, from your vessels, from your bones, and pushes them into the bloodstream, neutralizes that acid chemistry, keeps the child alive, but compromises the tissue quality, because those were ions that were in place where they were for a reason. They were adding density to the bone. They were adding strength and suppleness and matrix to the vessel systems. That was valuable stuff. Well, now they're gone. They had to get released so that you don't die, and that's really the cause of osteoporosis, which is a condition that's never seen in any culture that does not drink dairy food when they're adults. So the idea that you need, or your child needs, you need to feed your child dairy milk from a cow or a goat or anything after they're 3 years old is so unscientific and so fallacious, such a lie, and so dangerous, that it's causing obesity, it's causing type 2 diabetes, it's causing heart disease. You know, in the 1970s was the first war that we had, I think, in 20 years since, I guess, the Korean War. And so they had all these young kids dying coming back from Vietnam in the late 60s, early 70s. They're doing autopsies on these kids. And they were doing autopsies on these 19, 20-year-olds. And they noticed that they had cardiovascular systems that really looked like they were 50 or 60 years old. These 20-year-old kids were showing levels of heart disease that these medical doctors hadn't really seen in people that were not 50 or 60, because of our diet was degrading at such a rate, and the human body was degenerating equally at the same time, and the heart disease resulting from all these violations of our dietary, all these animal foods. But nowadays, they're doing the same thing, and if some 5 or 6 year old dies of some cause or something, they do autopsy that, they'll see the same cardiovascular system like degradation that they would normally have seen in a 60-year-old, and then later saw in the Vietnamese and the 20-year-old. Now they're seeing that in a 6-year-old. And so we're just going in the wrong direction with our children, and it's really all about these myths and these lies. And that's why, if there's really anything that is most important to me about this podcast, this Fredcast, is the addressing of these nutritional myths, and hopefully helping you guys, not be fooled anymore by people that are interested in making money off of your misinformation and the manipulation of your behavior, which is behavior that is by its nature against your own interests. And yet we all do it anyway because of the power of the suggestion and the advertising and the misinformation. And so I'm kind of doing my best to shine a little bit of light out there against that stuff. So anyway, that's that myth. Keep dairy away from your children, everybody. If you want to use milks, go ahead and shift to those almond milks, those coconut milks. Those are fine alternatives, and they work just as well in any recipe. They taste great in cereal. So if you're looking to drink milk, there's vegan cheeses. I mean, the vegan cheeses are not healthy foods. They're not healthy, but they're alternatives, and they're fine. Give them to your kids, let them have some fun with cheese. It's nice. But eventually, I still eat the vegan cheese, and I always observe that I pay a price for it in my digestive system. So it's not healthy, but it certainly is a heck of a lot better than the alternatives, and it's certainly a great way to keep your kids happy in the meantime, and especially those alternative milks as well, because it's all the same. It's all milky. It's all good, and you can use it in cereal and in your recipes, and move on without having to deal with dairy, and especially with your kids, but really especially with any human. Okay. So let's move on to our last section here of our show, which is our Living Enlightenment section. And today we're going to talk about speaking truth. All right, so one of the things I try to do in these episodes, and I'm going to get back to the prophet, I can assure you of that. I am still not with my copy in front of it. I know I could go online and I could read it from the internet, but I don't really want to do that. I prefer to read it from my copy that my mom gave me, which I have in Colombia, and I'll be back there next week. So we'll start to get back to the prophet soon enough. But the rest of these episodes we are all containing this part that's really called living enlightened or living with enlightenment, which is, how do we take these teachings that we hear about or that we learn from, and we get them, how do we apply them into our daily life. um, well, here's one. This is one from the Yoga Sutras, which says that if you're going to speak, make sure it's true. Okay? If you're going to speak, make sure it's true. And I always like to bring this up because I think that it's commonly misunderstood, or I think there may be a common misunderstanding that says that really what we want to be doing is always speak the truth. Like always speak the truth, and never lie, and all of that. And the never lie part I agree with, but the always speak the truth part I do not agree with. And that's because of what this teaching is saying. And I think we learn this as kids in the English language. We learn this little proverb that says, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. Um, and so that's the same thing, which is that you don't have to speak. We don't have to open our mouth. We don't have to, you know, say what is on our mind just because it happens to be true. A lot of times we get into trouble for that. A lot of times, we will say something very quickly that we made an observation of. And children do this, of course. And as we grow up, hopefully we learn more and more not to do this. I think it's a pretty basic skill, but I wanted to bring it up just in case. Which is that, just because something is true doesn't mean that it's appropriate. Just because something's true doesn't make it helpful. The idea that it's your job to hold the mirror up to everybody that you meet and show them all of their, defects and all of their weaknesses and all of their patterns, and that's your job, and you have to be that, play that role for everybody in your life. No, that's not true. That role, we don't play that role very often, actually. The role where we're allowed to reveal to other people all the things that they're unconscious about. Um, that kind of role, we only get that play that role if we're a teacher and playing the role of a teacher, and they're playing the role of a student in this interaction, or in this drama that we're playing. And if that's the case, then yeah, it's your job to hold up the mirror and show people what they're doing, and how their patterns are not conscious and creating different results that are not ideal. And okay, great. But guess what? How often are you really, really playing the role of a teacher versus student? With your friends, no. With your family, no. With your work, with your coworkers, no. So how many opportunities do you really have to be that person who is going to, excuse me, go around and reveal to everybody else what they're not doing right? When the fact is that what is only thing is important is to shine the mirror on ourselves. If we want to shine the mirror on something, and we want to start to look at what it that needs to be transcended in life, then we don't need to be doing that with other people. We need to be doing that with ourselves, you know? And so if we don't have something nice to say, we don't have to say anything at all. And that's the mature, and that's the wise approach, you know? And so it saves energy as well. You don't have to talk. I like to be quiet a lot. I mean, I'm certainly capable of speaking. I have a gift of speaking, as you know, I have all my life been a teacher of different subjects, and I find that I can do that with facility. That's great, wonderful for me. But what I really like is to be quiet, and not to talk, because if the situation is not appropriate, and everyone's enjoying their barbecue ribs and their chicken sandwiches, these people are my friends, or these are people that I have a nice association with, then I'm not going to go around and start speaking and telling people the truth about what they're eating, and how it's not going to be good for their long-term, health. That's not my, that would not be the role I would be there to play. All right. And so when in doubt, I like to be quiet. When in doubt, I like to stay humble. When in doubt, I just like to mind my own business, and take care of what I'm doing. And I do it, what I do it for my own reasons. And I like to educate people because it is, to me, one of my roles and one of the jobs and one of my dharmas, that I'm here, I believe, on this planet to do, which is to teach this subject. Um, but again, that's something that I don't do all the time, and I only do it when the situation arises where that's appropriate. And that's why I've created this Fredcast, and maybe only 5 people will listen to it. You know what? That's okay, because if only one of those 5 people takes only one of these things that I'm saying, and puts it to good use, well, guess what? That's worth it for me. It is worth it for me, because all of this stuff starts like that, with one person spreading it to one person, and then we all, spread it from there. It's possible that the one person that hears this information is going to have a voice that could reach 1 million people, right? And so I just like to do this and plant the seeds, and it, of course, allows me to feel like I'm contributing, and that's all good for my sense of fulfillment. And so this is a self-serving project, of course, but I hope it's useful. I hope that there's a couple of gems in these episodes that you can take with you, and use them to improve your daily life. All right, everybody. So I had some questions, but I am not going to address them this week. I'll compile them for the next episode. I'll sign off here. I'm in Miami, Florida. I'm about to actually go out and have an early Father's Day celebration with my family, so I'm looking forward to that. Nothing is more of a blessing than to be able to spend time with your family. Of course, they'll all be eating, steaks and chickens and fishes and all those things, and I'll be smiling and eating my vegetables and whatever else that I happen to find off the menu, and just be giving thanks for spending time with my family, and that's something that I've learned to do over the many years, which is prioritize family time over trying to be some sort of a preacher, who's trying to save everybody, all the time. As I was saying before, I like to worry about myself, and I like to stay quiet, and only move into a role of teacher or educator when the time is appropriate. And with my family, that time is like never appropriate, because they're just not interested, really, in my opinions, because I think they've heard it enough before, and they've made their decisions, and at that point we're all gonna do what we're all gonna do, and I don't love them any less because they eat a certain way, and they don't love me any less because I eat a certain way, and I think that's how it should be. All right, everybody, so happy Father's Day to you if this episode gets out on time. If not, then belated, and all of the best during the time between now and our next episode. If you'd like to address questions or any way that you have, please email me to my name, Fred Bush, FredBusch, at miamiyoga.com. And I'll get your questions on the air, hopefully. All right, signing off from Miami. Have a great afternoon, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. I love you all.